Yeah, that is a great introduction, actually, as we are recording just now. I think I couldn't have said it
We're
better. It's
already
like,
demonetized.
um, I mean, yeah, the current situation and in
No, you're
Ukraine
supposed
and
to do the
Russia.
thing though. You're supposed to do the thing.
I'm
You're
supposed
rolling.
to do a thing. I think by now you had the greatest introduction of all times. Let's talk shit.
He's rolling.
So
I'm Rish. We're already
and
in the middle of a talk.
yeah, we are already in the middle of talking shit about the situation in Ukraine and Russia, and I just throw this there. One of the things I just said right now is the Ukrainians getting Leopard ones and Gepards, and one of the recommendations I was going to make is keep the Iron Cross on the side of that thing. So
No,
in all earnest.
America has already sent Ukraine the equivalent of the annual Russian budget for defense. America's already sent $68 billion to Ukraine.
And this
And we're
morning,
planning a new aid package.
mm, this morning I
Oh,
saw a report that the whole economy of Russia
we're
is
$31
equivalent.
trillion in debt. Where is this money coming from? I don't understand.
Well, look in your bank accounts. But as I was saying, the whole Russian economy apparently is the size of the economy of New York State. So here we go.
Well, I mean,
No,
California would be, I think, either the fourth or fifth largest economy. If California was a sovereign nation, it would be either the fourth or fifth largest economy on the planet. I don't have the numbers in front of me because that's not how we do our show. We just go
well,
with it.
technically we were looking at something else, but it's been a while, and like I said, let's talk shit. But on the substance of it, the real reason why the Russians have nothing to gain or win in this war is very simple. At the operational level, you have a population that is for decades, if not for centuries, when you go back in Russian history, really go back to Russian history to the 1300s. There was always someone in charge with a small crust of elites,
But if you
and the
go back
rest
that
was
far, wouldn't it
peasants.
be Novgorod?
Novgorod, Yevan Rus, and whatever. So it's really interesting to look at a Finnish former intelligence officer was giving a lecture in a Finnish university, and he was saying when you start with the Mongols and you carry on those 10-20 years that we had or that Russia had under Yeltsin and early Putin as a democracy, yeah, is an anomaly in Russian history. There was always a corrupt elite with one big poncho in charge, and the rest of the people was, yeah, peasants. Yeah, you are there to serve us. This kind
Well, I
of
mean,
thing.
if you go back far enough, it would have been the Golden Horde, but they were not ethnically Slav.
It's less a thing of the ethnicity. It is in essence it's a mindset thing, and you can go back to ancient China. You wouldn't believe it from China right now or from say the 1600s onwards, but China was a center of civilization, not coming all the inventions they made. Yeah. So one of my history teachers said these people were firing rockets at each other while we were climbing among the trees, things like that. But at some point, one of the dynasties in China decided we want nothing to do with the rest of the world. They are all barbarians. We are so great. Let's close our borders. And it is not only closing your borders, it is closing your mind to everything what's around you in this world. When you look at the former Soviet Union? Why were they not able to build computers? Why is contemporary Russia or contemporary China not able to design computer chips? Because these closed mindsets for centuries have left a populace, especially under dictatorial rule, that is waiting to be told what to say, do, and think. And if they are not told, they don't do it. It is as simple as that. And even when they are told, they are not complying. And one of
But see,
the major things.
that creates a garden of flowers that never is watered.
Exactly. Look at the former Eastern Germany, the German Democratic Republic, and the public uprising in 1953. When you try to implement this kind of dictatorial quota rule on a population that has lived for centuries in, let's say, a more free world, you are getting resentment. And the problem with population control, as is exercised Soviet Union, Russia, China, is once you put the boot on people's neck, it has to stay there. If you let go of the boot, you have a revolution.
They don't know how to live without the yoke.
Exactly, but yeah, I'm supposed to talk about Russia and China, but the trajectory is essentially the same. We have right now, I get daily news from people that I know. Oh, there was again a protest in China. There was this in China, and the same thing happens in Russia. People or young men that have the prospect of being conscripted into the army and without much training being thrown into the meat grinder in Ukraine say, it's enough. What can happen to me if I try to leave the country illegally? They sent me to fucking Ukraine. So what's the difference? So
Well, I
it's
can tell you the
really
difference from the Ukrainian side is they were attacked, they got hit in the face, they rallied up, got their boys, got their troops, said, nah, not today. Not
there's one
today.
thing, one
They're
lesson.
fighting for their families, man. Those guys,
That's exactly my point.
they're not gonna give up. They're
You
not
know,
gonna give up. They're not gonna accept annexation.
hmm,
They're not accepting any of it.
look, the
They
best
are
thing.
willing, they are literally willing to go to the front lines and die for the cause. And the other side is sending people who don't care about it and don't want to be there. You cannot
Look,
win like that. I know as an American, look at Vietnam.
that was exactly what I was going to say. Look at the Russians in Afghanistan. Look at the Western Alliance in Iraq. Look at the Americans in Vietnam. Look at the fucking Crusades 1,000 years ago. You cannot conquer a populace that is fundamentally against you being there. Yeah.
With a
And
populace that does not wish for the
exactly.
land itself.
Exactly.
When you're invading a country to take the land, look at how the British took over the Americas. They sent people who wanted to take the land and make something of it, and the land was going to be theirs, and it was theirs to cultivate, but they had to take it at the end of a bayonet, a sword, smallpox, which actually conquered the Americas more than anything, going
Yeah.
back to the Spanish. If you try to take over a land with forces who do not wish to have that land as their own against a force of people who view the land of its own, you will never succeed. Never.
It is impossible. And at the operational
You would
level, if
have
you
to
have,
kill every single one of them.
and first of all, that's not going to happen, both practically on the ground. And as I was saying, if you have a populace like the Russian populace that has been in this kind of life, yeah, you do not have the operational capability to even at the operational military factual level to overcome a resistance of people that even worse, is defending their own home, their own country.
And you were supposed to win 6 months ago.
Is
it was supposed to be over before it started. And they were like, well, nah, not yours. Go home.
Is one of the big things where I don't know how to evaluate that. You know, even in the first wave of attack, that famous convoy to Kiev, yeah. That
not
was
everybody made it home.
No, Rish, they were stuck on the road because they ran out of fuel, they ran out of food, and their tires are fucking shit.
But there was all reports that they were selling their fuel to buy food. Is that propaganda? Is that truth? Does it sound like something that could happen? Yes.
Food and tires were supplied by China. China supported this invasion from day one on the material level. And well, some of the rumors that came out a couple of weeks ago, 1 month ago, 2 months ago, is that Putin actually requested military assistance, and the Chinese said, "Yeah, not going to happen." And the other side is what kind of material or personnel assistance would they be able to get? Their army is in no better shape than the Russian army. Period. So,
well, I would argue the Chinese army is less equipped to fight because the Russians, like Americans, use their military. Whether it's official or non-official, America uses its military more than anybody. Our troops are proven. They have boot level
experience.
They know how to fight because they have been in fights. Russia, I would say nowhere near America as far as military combat experience on a grunt to grunt basis. China has a huge military. They haven't fought anyone. You don't know what your troops are. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
You see the difference. I would say the Russians do have combat experience, not necessarily positive one. But the only combat experience China has is getting kicked out of Vietnam by militia. That is the combat experience the Chinese forces have. And when you look at it on a comparative level between the Russians and the Russians maybe are not as good equipped as the Chinese, but the Russians know how to use their shit. And the Russians do have a level of combat readiness. I would reckon on a comparative level is that, I mean, you can argue how much vodka has something to do with it, but I foresee if you have to, let's just say on a military level, operational level, assault that position, the Russians would send in a troop of conscripts. Conscripts get wiped out.
No, if Russia wants to win, they send in the Wagner group because all of the Russians who know how to fight are Wagner.
What the Russians would then do is use that experience. Okay, if we try like that, we get wiped out. And they would find a different way of assaulting that position. If need be, bombarded for a couple of days with artillery from long range. What the Chinese would do is they would keep sending troops up that hill.
Meat grinder.
Because they have no fucking idea what else to do. And the boss says, do that. So that is the difference at the operational level. And at that level, equipment doesn't matter. It's you see the problem with the Russians at this stage or in this invasion is the battle doctrine or the combat doctrine of the Russians is essentially, let's run towards the enemy. If it works, fine. If not, we send in the next wave after we bombarded the shit out of that area with massive artillery assault. This is really the how do I say that? When the Americans in World War II drove into Germany, whenever they got stopped, what happened is they called in artillery or air support and then tried again. And what happened on the Eastern Front was essentially the Russians bombarded the Germans until really the Germans had enough, and then assaulted German positions with numerical superiority. And they took casualties like mad with that. At the end of 44, when the Russians were already in Poland, the Russian Central Command said, we need to stop sending people in towards enemy positions because we are running out of people. At the end of World War II, the Russians had more rifles than people. At the beginning, it was the other way around. And when they were in Poland and waiting for the Germans to wipe out the Polish resistance, the Russians really looked at it from the point of view, we need to conserve our strength, because this is only the fight against the Nazis. The next fight will be with the Americans, the British, and so on. And they changed, or they modified their doctrine to massive artillery support. And after World War II, combined warfare in terms of first we nuke them, then we nerve gas them, then we artillery strike them, and then we move in. And
But see, Russia exported that business model, that war strategy. They exported that to all of Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe is an artillery-based fighting force. You look at the Americans, look at Africa, look at Southeast Asia. These are people who are willing to get in the trenches and they want to fight you. They want it up close, bloody, brutal. Africa is not scared to fight you to your face, hand to hand if need be.
The same thing in Asia.
Under 100 meters, under 100-meter confrontations in Africa, they're ready for it. Eastern Europe, no. They want kilometer-long engagements.
Yep. I mean, it is easier to shoot at someone when they can't shoot back, obviously. But the thing is, when these two worlds collide, as they do in Ukraine, the Ukrainians are, first of all, as you were naming it, they are ready to go up to into your face. Number one. Secondly, the Ukrainians are, or were in the process of building a force that is maneuverable. And if the force is not there, you can't hit it. So your artillery strikes, they destroy a lot of.
No, you're shooting where I was, not where I'm gonna be.
And that's the thing. Over the last, when you see what has been fighting the Russians, is a lot of the regular army is outside of Ukraine being trained by the British, by the Germans, and so on. And going back to the start of who blew up that pipeline, in effect, it doesn't matter, because Putin already dialed down on the gas. So, and he is, whatever gas is still coming to Western Europe, he's going to switch that off as soon as it gets colder here.
But as they say in Game of Thrones, winter is coming.
Yeah, but the point is, the Germans are not the ones that are going to say that is my personal opinion. On day one, when Putin started using natural resources as a means of warfare, is when NATO should have said, Article 5, here we go. We give you 24 hours to switch the gas back on, or else. And going to what I said, Putin is a person that needs to be slapped across the face in order to get the message.
But see,
So
but you can't just run to Article 5 because we already discussed this in a previous video. Some NATO members are not pulling their weight. And who's going to make up the difference? It can't always just be us.
Not only the question, who should it be? It's also the
It should be
question, who
us,
benefits.
not us.
So the thing is, if things worked normally, we wouldn't need any American boots on the ground. American support or an Ohio SSGN in the Baltics, nice to have, yeah. And the other thing is, if, well, first of all, if Article 5 is called, how many would actually be following? Not only who is able to, but who wants to, yeah. I think a lot of people, speaking as a German, we do not want to look reality in the face. We don't, in plain English terms, we don't want to say the Russians are the enemy. And I think there is too much of a naivety, not only in politics, but in the German society or in European society, that what has been an anomaly in Russia or the world, this literally this peace for almost 70 years in Europe, we are taking this for granted and we assume we don't have anything to do for it to keep it that way. And going back to the Cold War, there was a wall through Germany. We knew which side is the good side, which side is the bad side, and it made a lot of things easier. If the Germans said, we want 2,500 tanks, the rest of the world said, awesome, go for it. So if we now want to say, okay, we want to build 500 tanks, we want to have 500 tanks, which we are far away from at this moment in time. Not only would you have a societal debate without the Russians getting involved and talking shit about it, trying disinformation or whatever, it is an internal problem that not only the younger generation who grew up after the Cold War, but people like you, me, even older people that are now in politics refuse to call a duck a duck. Yeah. And
well, just like Russia refuses to call the war on Ukraine a war. You label things just
you label. Well, that is another thing. Is I think morally and within the Russian population, Putin lost the war the moment he called it a special operation. And as much as you have people who believe the bullshit with Nazis in Ukraine, yeah, this is really like if you say the word Nazi in Russia, it is literally the Red Army gearing up for war. So the thing is, Putin used this kind of terminology, and now the Red Army or the Russian forces have been getting their ass kicked. There's no other way to describe it.
no. And when did that happen though? The terminology. Use the word Nazi, use the word racist, use the word homophobic, transgender, and now all of a sudden, without any proof, you are now the good guy because you use that word against someone, and there's no proof of. When did that happen?
Over the last 10, 20 years, unfortunately. But I don't think you wanted an answer.
I mean,
But
America's huge on innocent until proven guilty, and that's the case in our court system. But in the case of our media and social media,
it is
you're fucking guilty
even
right
if
now.
proven
You're a
innocent.
terrible person. You should go kill yourself.
Yep. And what I see is Putin. Well, first of all, the Red Army got their ass kicked, so they are no longer the Nazi busters. Now he has the problem: how does he get more people into a war zone when Russian people more and more learn about, I'm getting my balls blown off there. Yeah,
Well,
that
how
is
long did it take
literally.
for the Chechenian forces? They left after a couple of months, didn't they?
Yep. So, I mean, the only, well, look at it from this point of view. Those people that at some point, even the smallest attrition in forces is going to cause a lot of problems for this invading army. And what they are now doing is they are now throwing people who really don't want to be there and have not managed to escape in time in the meat grinder. Of course, you will have a couple of crazies that are getting a hard on about the prospect of trying to strike in real, but those are the people mostly with a shit death to kill ratio.
No, those are people who
As
played Call of Duty too much and drank a couple shots of vodka and said, "Yeah,
yeah,
war."
there was this thing, a
Fuck out of
British
here.
guy, famous Counter-Strike player, joined Islamic State, and the first time they threw him in a battle, he was killed. And the comment on the news was exactly that: shit death to kill ratio, dude. So no, you have that going against the Russians. Then you have literally a force that has absolutely no idea what to do except advancing in front of a huge artillery curtain, which is not doing them any good. So it is a situation that, if you were a commander in chief of the Russians, you don't want to go there. You don't want to create it. As a second thing, where Putin failed, he created this situation. And number three, again, a thing that the ideology the Russians and the Chinese are operating with is an assumption that the West is weak, that the West, we have distracted the West with all these debates about transgender, Nazis, and whatever. Yeah. And literally from day one of the war, the Russians got a taste of the medicine. Well, it ain't so. What you going to do about it? And factually, going back to this thing about the pipeline, it doesn't matter who destroyed it. It is an economic warfare initiated from day one by both sides, and neither side is admitting we are at war with each other. Yeah, we the Germans and the Russians, we're not shooting at each other yet. Yeah, but if the other side,
Kind of.
of it is, Putin is not stupid. By now, he knows he got his balls tied up there. And if NATO was providing substantial support, Ukrainians or NATO would steamroll through Russia up to Moscow. I mean, you don't have to mobilize your whole army and roll onto Moscow. I said it before, but if the Americans really, especially, well, it goes for a couple of other forces as well. But if NATO, if the Americans really, really wanted, if they were really desperate to end this war right now, it would take a SEAL team to get Putin out from the Kremlin to The Hague and done. Yeah.
Well,
And the
if
thing
we
is,
really, really wanted to end it, we already have a couple of submarines right off the coast.
it's there is a book by Tom Clancy. A lot of people know him as a novel writer, but he is a man with I think he flew Tomcats. And he wrote a couple of books about the American military. And one of
He's got
the
like 300 books, dude. He's wrote a lot
yeah,
of books.
I mean, a lot of people just know him writing Hunt for Red
Yeah, the Rainbow
October.
Six series.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's his most
not many
popular.
people know that he is he also wrote a lot of documentary books. And one of the books is about the U.S. Marine Corps. And in one of the chapters, he basically states, if you have a marine amphibious unit on their supply ships, on their assault ships, and you put that in front of the enemy coast, you can see a behavioral change on that enemy coast, because no one wants to fuck with 1,000 uh, ill-tempered U.S. Marines. So the thing is what's going on. Um, Both the Americans and NATO have so far provided material support, as in things to shoot with and training. If we really got more serious about this, let's just say there wouldn't be a bridge, there wouldn't be any Russians in Ukraine right now. And as soon as Western forces realize, or Western politicians realize, that we are in this situation, what are we doing if Putin really uses a nuke? And how do we dissuade that first use effectively without pushing too far and actually make first use more likely? On this equation, I have to say Putin has nothing to lose, because what are we really going to do if that happens? We have the power to conventionally completely obliterate Russia within hours. That is not the question. But what kind of operational strategy are the Americans is NATO following? Are we really serious about ending this war? Because if we are, we should do something about it. And within hours, we can completely disable Russian nuclear capability. At this moment, if well, there was in the news, oh, the Russians are sending this very dangerous submarine into the Atlantic. And I was like, yeah, and the Americans have at least three
We're
Los
not
Angeles
worried.
class right next to it. And
We
that sub,
we don't give a shit.
it's
Like as
you
soon
know
as it
where the sub
left, as
is?
soon as it left, we had multiple vessels just painting it with the laser. Just okay, do something stupid.
As,
We are really good at unaliving things.
it's a situation, realistically. The Americans have at least 2 or 3 submarines constantly on patrol and know what is coming out of Murmansk. You
Not to
guys
mention
know.
various satellites.
So not only that, the preparations for anything like that. Yeah, even for putting a ship to sea, the things you need to do before you are ready to go out to sea. If you have electronic intelligence capability like the Americans have, you can see what kind of cigarettes the captain is smoking while waiting. Yeah, and that is what is really the thing for me. If we are really serious, we should send a very clear message, or should have sent a very clear message a couple of months ago. This is what we can do. If you don't fuck off and shut the fuck up, it will become what we are doing. And that is what will end the war in Ukraine. Not so. What we are doing right now is we keep supplying Ukraine the means to shoot at Russians. At the end of the day, I have to say, these supplies, whether it is in finance or in actual material, we don't seem to be giving a shit about what's going on in Ukraine. Ukraine as a country is being annihilated at the very core. There is, where the Russians have occupied, there is nothing when they withdraw, literally nothing. Yeah. And
But
that
you'll
is,
see if Western Europe and America really gives a shit when it comes to rebuilding the country that we paid for all the munitions to obliterate.
and that's the
Will there be
problem.
money then?
Well, that is another question. And like I said, for me, on the both the political as well as the societal as well as the military level, either we are serious about it or we are not serious about it. And right now we are somewhere, we seem to be somewhere in the middle. Yeah. We keep supplying Ukraine, but a substantial help would be real weapon systems, would be an actual statement, move out of Ukraine, Vladimir, or else, and then back it up. We have the capability, undoubtedly. And if we want to avoid retaliation, we also have the capability. And from my perspective, the ideal response would be if we, as Western Alliance, are looking at what is the most likely retaliatory strike, like those missiles on Kiev now. Those missiles can fly further. They could attack Poland, Germany, and so on. And if we actually gave a shit, we would go in, eliminate the capability to strike, and make it very clear, this is what we can do. You don't want to push further. And without the means of actually enabling having a retaliatory capacity, Putin would start thinking very, very hard. Right now, what we have is he knows he's got his balls in a ringer there, and he knows he can't win. The thing is, he doesn't yet know, or he hasn't yet been told that Ukraine won't lose. He is still under the impression, well, if I lose, I can also make Ukraine lose. And that is a thing that the Western Alliance or the Western powers have not been serious about. And especially Europe should be serious about it, because, as you said, we can't always rely on the Americans, as well as, well, we need the Americans in Korea and Taiwan. So that's the other situation. That's, but I think
Well, we're already in Korea and Taiwan and Germany and now Poland, and help us help you. It can't always be us doing the fighting, man.
I think getting to next week's topic about the very recent changes in Southeast Asia. I think that is a good transition and ending here is that, but after, not even before Pelosi left Taiwan, British politicians said, oh, we are also going. And now Germans and Europeans have said, oh, we are also going. So
why do we always have to be first? This isn't the moon.
Well, let's put it that way. I don't want to say, I don't want to be too. I mean, there's no way this channel would be alive if I really say what I'm thinking about sending Pelosi to Taiwan. But the point is that, sending Pelosi to Taiwan, you Americans, you can only win. either way. So there is
Yeah,
that.
because if they shot the plane down, fuck it.
So your words, not mine. I'm not going to associate with that, but
First Amendment.
there is this thing is, and it proves the point I was making about a bully is not appeased, a bully is not accommodated, a bully is slapped across the face really hard, and whatever happens next, that bully will have some form of respect and probably not try again. So, and I think that is a good transition for next week. And that was Rish.
And next week, I'll still be Rish. He'll still be Roland. And we'll be seeing y'all
Next week.